Hello, you're watching Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Hello, CJ. Thank you for joining me today.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching the news. Here are the headlines.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter.
Derek Chauvin, a white former Minneapolis police officer, was convicted of murdering African-American George Floyd after a racially charged trial.
We're adjourned.
The Myanmar military junta's crackdown on anti-coup protesters has displaced close to 250,000 people.
The Japanese Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide postpones his visit to the Philippines.
And 7 members of a crew forced to abandon their cargo ship after it ran aground during a typhoon in the Philippines have been rescued and the bodies of others found.
First, the United States officer was convicted of murdering African-American George Floyd after a racially charged trial seen as a pivotal test of police accountability in the United States. Take a listen.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty.
The jury deliberated less than 11 hours before finding 45-year-old Chauvin guilty of all 3 charges against him: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter. Wearing a face mask and displaying no visible emotion, Chauvin was escorted out. Floyd embraced prosecutors. Chauvin faces up to 40 years in prison of the most serious charge, the second-degree murder. His sentencing will take place in 8 weeks, according to Judge Cahill. The 19-year veteran of the Minneapolis police force was seen on video kneeling on the neck of Floyd for more than 9 minutes as he lay face down and handcuffed on the ground, saying repeatedly, "I cannot breathe." The 46-year-old Floyd's death during his May 25, 2020 arrest for allegedly passing a counterfeit $20 bill sparked protests against racial injustice and police brutality around the world. Ahead of the verdict, cities across the U.S. states had been braced for potential unrest, and National Guard troops have been deployed in Minneapolis. Minneapolis has been tense awaiting the Chauvin verdict, and the city has seen nightly protests since Dante Wright, a 20-year-old black man, was also shot dead in a suburb of the Minnesota city on April 11 by a white policewoman. In Washington, meanwhile, the National Guard said some 250 troops were being deployed to support local law enforcement in response to potential demonstrations.
President Joe Biden called the members of the family of Floyd to say he was relieved by the verdict. Then later, he and Vice President Kamala Harris addressed the nation in a televised remark. Appearing alongside Biden, Kamala Harris, America's first black vice president, spoke first to articulate the relief the nation was feeling over justice being served, but acknowledged that the result could not take away the pain of Floyd's murder. Watch this.
It was a murder in the full light of day, and it ripped the blinders off for the whole world to see. The systemic racism the Vice President just referred to. There was systemic racism on our nation's soul.
Today, we feel a sigh of relief. Still, it cannot take away the pain. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice. This verdict brings us a step closer, and the fact is, we still have work to do. We still must reform the system.
I was just shocked. It was all emotion. It was all emotion. I don't think anybody expected this. And for the verdict to happen so fast after they've deliberated, it's unbelievable. I don't know if I should feel happy. I feel grief, but I feel happy that Derek Chauvin is being held accountable for the crime that he committed. And that's what matters right now.
Biden spoke out after a jury in Midwestern city of Minneapolis found Derek Chauvin guilty of intentionally suffocating handcuffed George Floyd as he lay defenseless with the officer's knee pressing on his neck for more than 9 minutes. The president called for confronting head-on systemic racism and the racial disparities that exist in policing and our criminal justice system, but pleaded for protesters to steer clear of violence.
In the above entitled.
Meanwhile, George Floyd's brother, Rodney, said that black people in America had been victims of deadly injustice at the hands of the authorities for hundreds of years. And Jerry Blackwell, the prosecutor at the trial of Derek Chauvin, said no verdict can bring George Perry Floyd back. Take a look.
Now, no verdict can bring George Perry Floyd back to us. But this verdict does give a message to his family that he was somebody, that his life mattered, that all of our lives matter. And that's important.
I get calls, I get DMs, people from Brazil, from Ghana, from Germany, everybody, London, Italy, they're all saying the same thing. We won't be able to breathe until you're able to breathe. Today, we are able to breathe again.
Chauvin was found guilty on 3 charges. Again, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter. His bail was immediately revoked and he was placed in custody. Sentencing is likely to happen in 2 months, and Chauvin could spend decades in jail. In Minnesota, second-degree murder carries a maximum sentence of 40 years. Third-degree murder is punishable by up to 25 years, and second-degree manslaughter is punishable by up to 10 years in prison.
A South Korean court on Wednesday dismissed a case brought by a handful of World War II sex slaves against the Japanese government, saying Tokyo enjoyed sovereign immunity over the issue. One plaintiff, a former comfort woman now in her 90s, was shaken by the ruling and left the courtroom before the hearing ended. Watch this.
어쨌거나 저 결과가 좋긴 하고 나쁘긴 하고 가네. 국제사법재판소로 갑니다. 꼭 갑니다. 저는 이 말밖에 할 말이 없습니다.
개인의 인권을 보장하는 방향으로 나가는 그 흐름에 역행되는 판결을 했다는 점에서 다시 한번
The ruling comes after the same court in January ordered Tokyo to compensate a dozen euphemistically labeled comfort women, marking the first civilian legal victory against Tokyo in South Korea. One plaintiff pledged to fight Wednesday's different verdict, which an analyst said would be a plus trade and security in recent years. The comfort women question and other issues stemming from Japan's 20th century colonial rule over Korea has bedeviled their relations, despite a 1965 treaty which declared claims between them and their nationals had been settled. Tokyo and Seoul are both major U.S. allies. democracies and market economies, but their rift, which has worsened significantly in recent years, presents U.S. President Joe Biden with a foreign policy headache as he seeks to build a common front on China and nuclear-armed North Korea. The Seoul Central District Court dismissed Wednesday's case after reaching the decision that sovereign immunity must be applied to the Japanese government, according to a court document seen by AFP. The decision was in keeping with previous diplomatic agreements between Seoul and Tokyo, and to ensure any additional negotiations were carried out smoothly, it added. It said if sovereign immunity is denied, diplomatic conflict with the accused will be inevitable in the process of sentencing and enforcement.
And to Maldives now, where the island nation begins administering its second dose of the Sinopharm vaccine. Joining us live from our EBC bureau there, here's Steffi Dewan. Hello, Steffi.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Maldives began to administer its second dose of Sinopharm vaccine in Greater Maldives region yesterday, 20th April, where Health Protection Agency stated that the second dose of Sinopharm vaccine will be administered from different vaccination centers. They are at the Treetop Hospital, which is available at 10 to 12 in the morning and 8:30 to 11 in the evening, while in People Majalis is at 9 to 11:30 in the evening. The second dose will initially be available to all individuals who got their first dose between March 22 to 23, while the first dose of Sinopharm is still available from the Treetop Hospital from 9 to 11 in the evening. Those who go to get vaccinated are required to take their national ID card or other official identification documents and must not exhibit symptoms consistent with COVID-19 or especially be under quarantine. They must also present their vaccination card if they are receiving their second dose. People who go for vaccination is advised to wear loose clothes to make it easier to show their shoulder for the vaccine shot. They are also required to disclose information regarding the medication they are currently on. Maldives launched its COVID-19 vaccination campaign on February 1st. Since then, 281,848 people have received their first dose and 45,817 people have received their second dose. Meanwhile, HPA also introduced online checks for queues at different vaccination centers. The Health Protection Agency has made arrangements so that people attending to receive vaccines can now check the queues at different vaccine centers. Upon scanning the QR code of the vaccine queue number to prevent congestion and long queues. Complaints have been made over extremely long queues stretching around the blocks of vaccine centers. However, HPA said that in order to resolve these complaints, the agency had made arrangements so that people can now check the status of the queue online as they go for vaccination. And that's my quick update from Maldives. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you very much, Steffi, for your updates there in Maldives. Looking forward to more updates. Thank you very much. You stay safe and see you soon.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Maldives. This is Steffi Dihuan and with you in Interesting Times.
In other news, the Myanmar military junta or the crackdown on anti-coup protesters has displaced close to 250,000 people. We have EBC's Gila Pablo, who's following the developments from Thailand. Gila, please tell us more.
Yes, CJ, good evening. Again, UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar, Tom Andrews, said the Myanmar military junta's crackdown on anti-coup protesters has displaced close to 250,000 people. In a tweet, he said, I quote, horrified to learn that the junta's attacks have already left nearly 250,000 Myanmar people displaced, according to sources. End of quote. The military has stepped up its use of lethal force to quash mass demonstrations against a February 1 coup which ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. At least 738 people have been killed and 3,300 are languishing in jails as political prisoners, according to a local monitoring group. Free Burma Rangers, an aid group, estimated last week at least 24,000 people were displaced in northern Karen state amid military ground attacks and airstrikes earlier in the month. Karen National Union Brigade 5 spokesperson Paduman Man said Wednesday that more than 2,000 Karen people have now crossed Myanmar's border into Thailand, and that thousands more are internally displaced. Amid mounting violence, Southeast Asian leaders and foreign ministers are set to hold the talks on the Myanmar crisis in Jakarta on Saturday. Coup leader Min Aung Hlaing's expected involvement in General Antonio Guterres and his predecessor Ban Ki-moon on Monday urged governments in Southeast Asia to push to end the crisis in Myanmar during a video conference of Security Council leaders. The EU on Monday announced sanctions on 10 Myanmar junta officials and 2 conglomerates linked to military over the coup and bloody crackdown on protesters in their country. Back to you, CJ.
Well, thank you so much, Gila, for your update. Please do keep us posted on the latest developments on this story, and please do take care over there in Thailand.
Thank you, CJ. Again, this is Gila Pablo reporting for EBC ASEAN Bureau. We live in interesting times.
To the country now, the Philippines understands the decision of Japanese Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide to postpone his plan to visit the Philippines and India on a trip originally set for the end of this month. Now, reports show that the Prime Minister decided to postpone his visit to the Philippines and India to focus on handling a recent surge in COVID. Decision of the Office of the Prime Minister to postpone the planned official visit of His Excellency Suga Yoshihide to the Philippines. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said this in a statement. Secretary Roque said the OP, or Office of the President, understands the Prime Minister's decision since beating COVID-19 is a priority shared by other countries. He, however, assured that ties between the Philippines and Japan would remain strong despite the postponed visit. In December of 2020, the President Duterte, and the Prime Minister reaffirmed their shared commitment to strengthen the Philippines-Japan relation in a 25-minute telephone conversation since he assumed the presidency back in 2016.
Now, India's brutal new COVID outbreak set records on Wednesday with more than 2,000 deaths in 24 hours as hospitals in New Delhi ran perilously low on oxygen. Watch this.
Like first and foremost, where it's like we are finding it difficult to give like personal care or treatment to affected patients since we are running out of oxygen, the medicines like remdesivir and a few of the drugs are not available, and oxygen has been the main shortage, and we are finding it difficult to admit serious patients who require ventilator. So most of the patients have been sent back because we don't have enough of these oxygen and the remdesivir drug.
Challenges that we are facing is for the patients who are staying at home and who have been diagnosed positive and they need oxygen. So we have to move pillar to post to get them. Okay, so that's one challenge. And generally, we are also in the network of other hospitals. So they are also having acute shortage of oxygen, and they are running from pillar to post. But one good thing is the government of India has released new oxygen quota. So under which I think this whatever shortage or lacuna is there, that should be fulfilled very soon.
Yeah, 100%. Lockdown is the only option because in the first wave, like if one person was getting COVID positive in a whole building, the building was get sealed off, right? So that time it got controlled. Now if some person is getting COVID positive, no one cares.
मोहल्ले में, अपार्टमेंट्स में छोटी छोटी कमेटियां बनाकर कोविड अनुशासन पालन करवाने में मदद करें।
To the nation.
ऐसा करेंगे तो सरकारों को
In an address to the nation on Tuesday night, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the country of 1.3 billion people was once again fighting a big fight. Oxygen supplies in Indian hospitals were running perilously low Wednesday as daily COVID-19 deaths surged past 2,000 for the first time in one of the world's most brutal ongoing coronavirus waves. Production of key coronavirus drugs slowed or even halted at some factories, and there were delays in inviting bids for oxygen generation plants, according to press reports. And distraught relatives are now being forced to pay exorbitant rates on the black market for medicine and oxygen, and WhatsApp groups are awash with desperate pleas for help. India has been in the grips of a second wave of infections blamed on lax government rules and a new double mutant virus variant, adding almost 3.5 million new cases this month alone.
And staying in India, early indications seem to suggest that vaccines will work against the new double mutant COVID-19 variant discovered there in India, believed to be a major contributor to the country's now current surge in cases. That, according to Rakesh Mishra, the Hyderabad-based director of the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, one of the Indian labs conducting genome sequencing of coronavirus samples, adding that more substantial evidence should emerge in the coming week or two. Again, let's listen in.
The fact that this variant is increasing in its proportion, that's what makes it in the category of variant of concern, because this is increasing in its ratio in Maharashtra and in many other places. And therefore, even if it is not more dangerous, if it's not more troublesome in many other ways, it is certainly is better in terms of spreading compared to other variants, and therefore it's of concern because more mutation can build upon this and they can be a problem. So that is why any mutation which is increasing its footprint in the population is considered a variant of concern. But the concern whether this one is going to be a problem in terms of clinical features or in terms of vaccine, those are valid concerns, and at the moment we have a couple of reasons to think that it might not be something to worry about so much, simply because we don't see more mortality or more severe symptoms in the people. Level of asymptomatic and all remains more or less the same as it was before.
The South Asian nation has recorded more than 3 million new infections and 18,000 deaths this month, bringing its caseload to the world's second highest after the United States. Its capital and worst-hit city, New Delhi, entered a week-long lockdown on Monday with parks, cinemas, and malls closed. Maharashtra State, the epicenter of the recent surge and home to financial capital Mumbai, on Tuesday further tightened restrictions on grocery shops and home deliveries. All non-essential shops and malls in the western state are currently shut until May 1st.
In other news, Europe's medicines regulator says that blood clots should be listed as a very rare side effect of Johnson & Johnson's coronavirus vaccine, but that the benefits of the shot still outweigh the risks. Take a listen.
The careful review of the cases and other available evidence have led the committee to the conclusion that these blood clotting disorders are very rare side effects of the vaccine. However, our work does not stop here. We will analyze any new data and any new evidence as it becomes available and provide updated guidance as needed. So it's too early to say anything about the real occurrence of the cases. What we do know is that at the moment we have around 7 million vaccinated people in the US, and we have at this moment in time 8 cases. So there is still no way of telling that it would occur less frequently or more frequently than with AstraZeneca for this moment in time.
What we want to do is make sure that people have the facts and the information available to them to take action in case of these possible and very rare side effects. But I have to stress again that they are very rare, and that in the vast majority of cases these vaccines are going to prevent death and hospitalization from COVID-19.
The United States is also expected to announce its decision on the single-shot J&J vaccine by Friday, as nations around the world urgently try to accelerate inoculation campaigns and revive their pandemic-ravaged economies. The European Medicines Agency assessment came as an EU official promised to have enough doses available to vaccinate 70% of European adults by the summer, a boon for the continent's sluggish rollout. Europe's Johnson & Johnson campaign was delayed after U.S. health regulators said the shot should be paused over blood clot fears.
Meanwhile, thousands of protesters are massed outside the German parliament today as lawmakers prepare to vote on a law amendment giving Angela Merkel's government power to impose tougher measures to curb the coronavirus pandemic. Take a look. With Germany buckling under a third wave, the amended law, including school closures and nighttime curfews, aims to end the political tug-of-war between the federal government and the 16 regional states over virus restrictions. Dubbed the emergency brake, the law prescribes tough measures, including sweeping shutdowns and overnight curfews in regions with incidence rates of more than 100 new infections per 100,000 people over the last 7 days. It would also force schools to revert to virtual teaching in states where the incidence rate exceeds 165, a tighter requirement than the 200 contained in an earlier draft of the law. Only one state had an incidence rate below 100 on Wednesday, while 7 topped 165, including the two most populous of Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia.
On Wednesday that Russia is aiming for herd immunity against the coronavirus by autumn and hailed his country's development of 3 vaccines. Watch this.
Настоящий прорыв совершили и наши ученые. И сейчас Россия обладает 3 надежными вакцинами от коронавируса. Центральное значение сейчас имеет вакцинация. Прошу правительства, Минздрав, глав регионов в ежедневном режиме заниматься этими повсеместно, что позволит осенью сформировать так называемый коллективный иммунитет.
The 68-year-old received his second dose of a coronavirus vaccine last week without specifying which of Russia's 3 jabs, Sputnik V, Epivac Corona, or Covivac, he had been administered. On Wednesday, he reiterated an appeal he has made multiple times in recent weeks for all Russians to get a vaccine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin also today denounced Western silence on Belarusian strongman Alexander Lukashenko's claim that his security services had thwarted an alleged U.S. plot to assassinate him. Take a look.
При этом характерно, что даже такие вопиющие действия не находят осуждения так называемого коллективного Запада. Никто этого просто как бы и не замечает. Все делают вид, что вообще ничего не происходит. А что было бы, если бы попытка госпереворота в Беларуси была бы реально предпринята? Ведь к этому же все и велось. Сколько бы людей пострадало?
Lukashenko said on Saturday that Russian authorities had helped derail a plot to overthrow the Belarusian government and arrested 2 Belarusian nationals in Moscow. He claimed senior U.S. politicians were involved in the alleged plot, saying no one but top leadership can assign the task of eliminating a president, unquote. On Saturday, Russia's Federal Security Service, or FSB, said in a statement that it detained 2 Belarusians who planned to stage a military coup in Belarus and kill the Belarusian leader. Lukashenko, who has ruled Belarus since 1994, thanked President Putin for his help and claimed that the Kremlin chief had discussed the affair with U.S. President Joe Biden last week. The 66-year-old Belarusian leader has faced down historic protests against his rule, which erupted after he claimed a 6th presidential term last August, claiming to have thwarted a Western-led revolution. President Putin has backed him in the crisis, and the two are set to meet in Russia on Thursday. The news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
San man tayo maglakbay, sila ang ating kaagapay. Suot-suot natin, mapadaan man sa patag o lubak ng buhay.
Family nung asawa ko, mga magchichanelas sila dito sa Liliw, Laguna.
Ang sapatos kasi kasama si Gus na tawag na mga basic needs. No?
Sobrang tibay po talaga niya. Parang bibilangin ng taon bago po siya masira.
Kaya kung nagnanais kayong pumasok sa kabuhayang ito, aba siyempre, tutulungan namin kayo dyan.
Unti-unti ko nang pinag-aralan kung paano lahat patakbuhin ang negosyo sa paggawa ng sapatos dito sa Marikina.
Dumami-dami na yung mga order sa amin. Kaya sabi ko, ano kaya kung tayo na kaya ang gumawa?
Business namin na nabubuhay at nagpaaral po sa aming magkakapatid.
Baka ito na ang negosyong perfect fit para sa inyo. Ako po, si Robin Padilla. At ito po ang ulat. Agapay sa hanap buhay.
Welcome back to the news. Nigeria's inflation hit a 4-year high of more than 18% in March, with food prices up 22.9%, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. At the popular food markets of Lagos, customers paint a grim picture of soaring prices. Watch this.
You come to the market just like the way you saw me pricing things. You no longer get them the same way we used to buy again. Even them themselves, they keep complaining. They buy very cost.
You can imagine the sales of some items, the cost of some items as at 2 weeks ago has increased with like 50% increase. We experience that increase almost every day. We workers to be able to save is affecting the savings. It's affecting because the income is not really increasing, but the prices of items are increased. So it makes it so difficult for us
Africa's largest economy was already struggling with a fall in the price of oil, Nigeria's major export, and a weak local naira currency before the global pandemic struck. Now, Nigeria's inflation has soared to a four-year high of more than 18% in March, with again food prices up 22.9% according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Nigeria narrowly exited the recession in the fourth quarter of 2020, but the drop in oil revenues led to a balance of payments deficit of $14 billion last year and has depleted its foreign reserves.
Disneyland Paris, normally Europe's biggest tourist attraction, will, from Saturday, host a mass COVID vaccination site at its convention center as France seeks to speed up its inoculation drive, according to officials today. The amusement park east of the capital has been closed since October 30, when non-essential businesses were ordered to close amid a surge in infections, putting its 17,000 employees out of work. It had originally planned to readmit visitors on April 2, but worsening conditions forced it to postpone. It'll be run by local authorities and the regional ARS Health Service and will be open weekends only, whereas other French vaccination sites often close on Sunday. The goal is to give shots to at least 1,000 people a day, as France aims to get at least one jab to 20 million people by mid-May. As of Tuesday, France had given at least one dose to nearly 12.8 million people, or 19% of its population, according to its health ministry's data. The Global Disney Group has announced 32,000 job cuts at its theme park activities worldwide by the end of the first quarter, mostly in the U.S. because of the impact of the coronavirus.
Instagram started offering users on Wednesday the option to filter incoming direct message requests for hurtful language, a step aimed at showing the Facebook-owned social network is serious about reducing online harassment. Look for hate speech or bullying the same way we do elsewhere, Instagram said in a blog post. But requests to open new private chats are where people usually receive abusive messages, it added. Running on the user's device to preserve privacy rather than Instagram servers, the new filters will block requests to open a direct messaging conversation that contain offensive words, expressions, or emojis. As well as a set of predefined filters, users will be able to add their own terms to their personal block list, just as they already can for comments on their posts. At first, users in 7 countries, Britain, France, Ireland, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, will be given the option, with more to follow over the next few months. Eagle News will be back with more updates. Please don't go away.
Wala akong pake sa sinasabi ng iba. Importante ay mas iba ka sa kanila. Biglang switch na career si N-E-R-D-I-E. Pag ako nag-hit, napakalit. Marami na sa akin ang magbibigay ng beat.
Hi guys! Ako nga pala si Jassel Valencia. Abangan nyo po ako bilang guest performer po sa Letters in the Music sa darating na Sabado, April 24, 1 to 2 p.m. And syempre mapapanood nyo lamang po yan sa Net25. See you po!
Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Welcome back. China's President Xi Jinping will attend U.S. President Joe Biden's virtual climate summit this week. That according to Beijing on Wednesday, as the world's top polluting nations seek rare common ground despite wider political tensions. President Xi will give an important speech at the meeting, according to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, days after a trip to Shanghai by U.S. the first official from Biden's administration to visit China. Let's listen.
It says that the United States and China will work together to address the climate crisis. I think this is the first time China has joined in saying it's a crisis.
President Biden has invited 40 world leaders, including President Xi and Russia's Vladimir Putin, to meet starting on Earth Day, meant to mark Washington's return to the front lines of the fight against climate change after former President Donald Trump disengaged from the process. The virtual summit will be the first meeting between the two leaders since Biden became president. No global solution on climate change is likely without both the U.S. and China on board, since the world's top two economies together account for nearly half of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions.
The European Parliament and EU member states have agreed a target to cut carbon emissions by at least 55% by 2030. Chair of the EU Parliament's Environment Committee, Pascal Canfin, hails the new targets and calls it a game changer. Watch this.
Of course. So we managed to have a 2030 target that will go above the minus 55 up to minus 57. And it means that when you compare the rhythm of reduction of CO2 of the last decade, 2010-2020, and the rhythm of reduction set in law from now on, 2021 to 2030, we will move 2.5 times quicker.
And the US is not our big brother on climate. We are the big brother or the big sister. So they will be actually encouraged by this. They will be pressed by this. They will need to deliver when they see what we have accomplished.
The agreement comes after intense negotiations between Parliament, who wanted at least 60% reduction, and leaders of the member states who agreed 55% in November. The EU target will be formally incorporated into a climate law and comes after months of deadlock talks that resumed early Tuesday afternoon and continued until after 3 a.m. The agreement comes ahead of U.S. President Joe Biden's climate summit, where Washington will unveil its own target.
In the foothills of Taiwan's mountainous spine, reservoirs are running dry as the island experiences its worst drought in decades, a crisis that risks deepening an already acute global semiconductor shortage. Take a look.
「去年，也就是109年这一年，它是56年来第一次没有台风登陆。那我们海岛型的国家，最主要的水量的来源是要靠我们的台风登陆之后，才能为我们水库带来大量的进水。
我想，因为在这个缺水的一个部分，目前的工业它的这个停水的这个比例上，那么大概厂商能够接受的这个承受的幅度大概是在20%。那目前的话，大概工业区它目前的这个比例上大概是在15% 左右。所以目前在各厂商，他们能够透过在这个水车的一个部分，还有提高它这个水资源的一个再利用率，来解决目前的一个水荒的一个问题。所以短期间暂时是没有太大的一个问题，但是的确是会是产生是在第二季会成为国内半导体供应，那么成为是一个比较不确定的一个因素。
In other news, 7 members of a crew forced to abandon their cargo ship after it ran aground during a typhoon in the Philippines have been rescued, and the bodies of 4 others found, according to authorities, on Wednesday. Research teams were still looking for a town on the southern island of Mindanao. Local disaster officer Aladin Sumampong said the survivors were taken to the hospital for treatment and were in a stable condition. A Philippine-registered vessel laden with nickel ore and carrying 2,000 liters or 520 gallons of diesel fuel was still afloat, according to Sumampong. 2 of the survivors were found on a beach with the bodies of 2 colleagues they had carried while swimming to shore, he said. At least 3 people have died in the central and southern Philippines as Typhoon Surigay skirts the country, according to authorities, forcing tens of thousands to seek shelter from flooding and strong winds.
Faced off where the elder Curry recorded his 11th straight game with 30 points, 30-plus points to lift the Golden State Warriors to victory over the Philadelphia 76ers. Plus, Zion Williamson played his first NBA game at the world's famous arena, Madison Square Garden. Tenny Sumagi for this report.
The Curry brothers faced off Monday night in the city of brotherly love, where the elder Curry Steph capped the night with a 49-point performance, including 10 threes from downtown, to give the Warriors the win over Seth and the Philadelphia 76ers.
We clawed our way back into the game and gave ourselves some life, so that was good after that 12-0 start, and then just scrapped the rest of the way. And obviously, if there's time left and me and Draymond in a pick and roll, good things happen. My first game as a freshman, I had 13 turnovers, and he left me out there to work through it, and that was the first time I heard that term, and I can't get it out of my head. So it's a lifestyle. You make mistakes, you keep it moving, keep your confidence, never doubt yourself. Just got to figure it out. This streak, I'm obviously aware, but it's you don't put too much pressure on yourself. You just play basketball. I think for the first time in that third quarter, I started to press a little bit down the stretch, and they started to pick up the intensity on the ball and rush a couple shots. But for the most part, I've just settled into just having fun. You know, being aggressive, obviously, but kind of letting the game come to you, and basketball, and it's obviously working.
It's the same thing after every game. It's just utter amazement at this guy's skill level, heart, mind, focus. It's just amazing to watch.
In other NBA news, 3 years ago, so much hype surrounded Zion Williamson, where Knicks fans were hoping that they would choose the #1 overall draft pick in the 2018 draft. Williamson went on to go to New Orleans, and the Pelicans forward made his NBA debut in the world's famous arena, capping off with 34 points Sunday afternoon.
I love playing here. When I played here in college, and this is my first time playing here in the pros, and I mean, this atmosphere, you know, whether they're cheering for you, whether they're booing for you, it's amazing. Honestly, I think outside of New Orleans, obviously, I think this might be my favorite place to play outside of New Orleans. I can't even lie to you. I can't lie to you.
Tune in to Eagle News for more stories and highlights on the NBA throughout the season. In New York, Tenny Sumagi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
And now, Eva Marie Cross from our ABC Germany Bureau shows us how to personalize our face masks by making straps for it. Let's take a look.
For some, it's been almost a year now, if not even longer, when the face mask has become a part of our everyday outfit. With the government restrictions in place that cause us staying at home a lot, some have learned a new skill. For example, how to sew a mask, using different fabrics and patterns to express their creativity. Gave us the opportunity to create individual masks to our own liking. But things have shifted, and in our current situation, it is now mandatory to wear medical masks, which limits us in wearing masks with our own designs. So that is why we prepared this DIY tutorial for you. This tutorial not only allows us to customize our mask, but it also comes with a function, which I will tell you more about in the end. Are you ready to be creative? Then let's get started with creating our own mask straps.
For the mask straps, we need beads. Of course, you can choose your favorite shapes and colors. Nylon thread, 2 clasps, 2 bending rings, and 2 crimp sleeves. If you don't have any crimping sleeves, we can make them ourselves. For that, we need silver wire, a large smooth screw, and crimping pliers. Before we start with the actual mask straps, we first make the crimp sleeves. If you already have them, you can skip this step. First of all, we take our silver wire and tie it around the nail 3 to 4 times. We now cut off the excess wire, but please be careful, and if you are underage, please ask your parents for help. Then, we pull the spiral off and do this one more time. Are you ready to live out your creativity? First of all, we cut our nylon thread to a certain length. I would suggest a length between 55 centimeters and 60 centimeters, but this is optional. You can decide for yourself how you like it best. You can try it on your neck to see if you're okay with the length. Now, tape one side of the thread so that the beads do not fall on the other side. And now, to the fun part. Thread your beads onto the thread and design your mask straps according to your preferences. If you finished your design, we will now get to the last part. You take the 2 crimping sleeves, and here is where it gets a bit tricky. Please make sure that the 2 clasps and the 2 bender rings are connected, like this. Then, we thread the crimping sleeve and the 1 bending ring with the clasp on the one side. We bend the end of the thread into a loop through the crimping sleeve. Then, we take our crimping tool and crimp the sleeve. Please make sure that the edges of the crimping sleeve are fully crimped so that you don't hurt yourself later while wearing the mask. We do the same on the other side. The crimping sleeve, the bending ring with clasp, And then the loop follows through the crimping sleeve. Last step, we need to crimp the sleeve. And kindly check again that nothing sticks out. Your own mask strap is finished. They don't just give our mask a new look of their own and accessorize our outfit, but most importantly, they also make it easier for us to stow them away. And they can also help in a way so we can minimize the touching of our mask with our hands.
Are you happy with your results? I hope you enjoyed this DIY and see you next time. I'm Eva Marie Krause from Eagle News International, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Eva. That's so cute. That's gorgeous.
That's so cute. What a fun project.
Yes.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Please watch the news again tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
And we'll see you back tomorrow. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.